Good evening. If everyone will grab a songbook, we'll get started. First song this evening will be number 480. Number 480. And in the chorus, we're not going to hold out those notes that we usually hold out. Number 480. After this song, we'll have Hunter Hill lead us in an opening prayer. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, Lord, glory divine. Heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect delight, visions of rapture, for my sight. Angels descend me, bring their love, echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I am my Savior, and happy and blessed. Watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
Pray with me. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to be here and worship you freely. We ask that you be with us this evening and that we take whatever we learn this evening and that we listen to it well and that we use it throughout our everyday lives. We ask that you be with those who are sick and who are unable to attend this evening, those who may be suffering from the loss of a loved one or anything they could be suffering from. We thank you for all that you do. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Next song will be number 881. Number 881. I'm satisfied with just a golden glow, the hills of silver and the hills of gold, but in that city where the rest will shine, I want that silver light. I imagine let's go to the hilltop in that bright land where we'll never go. this time mark in your psalm books to number 939. Number 939 will be the song of invitation. After you have that marked, number 622. And if it's convenient for you, would you please be standing? Number 622. There's a message true and glad for the sinful and the sad. Bring it out, bring it out. It will give the courage you, it will help them to be true. Bring it out, bring it out, bring it out. Love word for land and sea. Still far from Jesus, still he lives in sin and doubt. Bring out the news that makes him free to all the lost of every nation. Bring the message out. Tell the world of saving grace, make it known in every place. Bring it out, help the needy ones to know, and from whom all blessings flow. Bring it out, bring it out, bring out the word for land and sea. Still far from Jesus, chilling earth in sin and doubt. Bring out the news that makes him free to all the lost of every nation. Bring the message out. Sin and doubt to sleep away till shall dawn the better day. Bring it out, bring it out, till the sinful world be won for Jehovah's mighty Son. Bring it out, bring it out, bring out the word for land and sea. Still far from Jesus, chilly live in sin and doubt. Bring out the news that makes him free to all the lost of every nation. Bring the message out. Please be seated.
Glad you made it back tonight. We're giving our Honduras report tonight, so it's going to be a little different. Psalms 126, verse 6 states, "He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed of sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing his sheaves with him." We went out with the seed, and we came back with shouts of joy. I want to begin by thanking this congregation and thanking our elders for allowing us, sponsoring us to go on this trip to Honduras. It was a blessing for all of us, and I hope it was a big blessing for the people in Honduras. We couldn't have done it without you, and I thank you so much for this. Let me say, some people might say, I bet y'all just went off on a vacation off in Honduras. Let me say, it was not a vacation. It was work, but it was a great work for the Lord. Here was the itinerary for the day. Breakfast at the hotel at 6 a.m., depart hotel from Don Lee to San Diego. Morning devotional at 7:30 in San Diego, 8 o'clock men's, women's classes, 8:30 the clinic opens, and during the whole day there's the clinic and there's being Bible studies being set up in the clinic and then outside in homes during the whole day. 12 p.m. lunch and rotations at the campsite, at the campaign site. Clinic sees its last patient. This says 4:30, but that never happened at 4:30. It would last on longer. And then our evening gospel meeting was at 5:30 every evening, and it never started at 5:30. It was later than that. And then we would depart for the hotel at 7 o'clock, and then we would eat supper about 8 o'clock, and then we'd have our men's and women's classes after that. And so it was just a full day every day, except for the last day. There was a day that we went off and did some fun things on that day. We went to the Valley of the Angels, and it was this beautiful city way, way up in the mountains, and the road to get to it was like this on a bus, and it was kind of crazy, but we made it out of there. The campaign is called a medical campaign, but everything revolves around seeing that someone gets a Bible study, and everyone at the campaign is involved in trying to make sure that everyone has a chance to learn the gospel. Many, many people heard the gospel that week. It was amazing to me how you could go door to door, and everyone you went to the door, or every house you went to, they would say, yes, we will allow you to have a Bible study. And they would pull their best chair out on the porch or outside, and there we was. We just started having a Bible study. It was so, they were so inviting to us when we went to their homes. But they want to help people physically, but more than that, they want to help people spiritually. They want people to go to heaven. This campaign, that's what it's all about, is getting people to go to heaven. There were many Bible studies every day at the campaign site, and then the rest of us, we would go door to door, knocking doors and having Bible studies there. Those who went on the Honduras trip to serve were doctors, nurses, physical therapists, pharmacists, high school students, retired people, youth ministers, preachers, Bible class teachers, people who could only speak English, and then the smart ones like Betty Lemus over here who can speak Spanish as well, and just grown-ups who wanted to serve the Lord went on this trip, and everyone played a part. During the campaign, we had 348 Bible studies that week with 507 people in those Bible studies. Try to do that here in the United States of America. Impossible. I'm not going to say all things are possible with God, but we had a lot of Bible studies. I'm not going to say that they all ended the way we wanted them to, but we were blessed to have so many Bible studies with these people, and we just planted the seed everywhere. And there were great ministers and just people that went out and just planting the seed right and left, or there at the campaign site. 8 baptisms and 2 restorations. Throughout the week, there were 25 in our new converts class that we had each night. There were 114 in the teen class. Children's class during the day had 359 kids in it, 162 in the evening children's class, 33 visitors at gospel meeting every night, 306 people at the meeting. Total registered during the week of the clinic was 969. We gave out 1,343 pairs of glasses. There were 1,014 people who went through the pharmacy. The doctors saw 960 patients. The pharmacists saw 1,014 patients and gave out 4,725 medicines. 97 had physical therapy done. This campaign was the happening place for the week. Let me tell you, this town of San Diego had about 1,300 people in this town, and 969 people registered at our campaign. So a town of, and there was well over 1,000 that were actually there that just didn't get registered, but this was the happening place. We went out the first day and just handing out flyers saying what we're doing. There's free medical clinic we set up in this at somebody's house across from a school, and the people just flocked to this place. I want to brag on Betty Lemus, and I want to brag on my daughter Mackenzie. And I love Phil. Phil did a wonderful job, but I just want to brag on these ladies tonight because he gets to get up and speak. But I want to brag on them. They both, I've already said, we are going back next year. If we have to spend all our money, we'll be saving up. My daughter said, I will save up from now, if I have to go back to Honduras. That's how much of an impact this made on these two ladies' lives. They were so brave and so courageous in everything they did. Thinking about my daughter, we got there and we're on the bus and we go. It's a crazy city. You land in this massive city. It's not skyscraper city, but it's just huts and houses just as far as you can see in every direction, just one upon another. And my daughter asked her on the bus, "Are you doing all right? Everything?" "Oh yeah, Daddy, I'm doing fine." And that evening, I asked her, I said, "What do you think so far?" And she goes, "Daddy," she said, "when we landed and we were on that bus in Tegucigalpa," she said, "I was scared and I wanted to go home." And I was like, she never said anything, but then she got there and she goes, "I love this. This is so great." And so I was so proud of her bravery and the way she helped all the kids there. And she worked with Phil and the kids, and one day she went out door knocking with me most of that day. So I was so proud of her. My daughter, she wants to go back, and Betty wants to go back as well. Betty might have been the hardest worker there, and I'm not saying that. I mean it when I say she was probably out of 95 workers that we had, Hondurans and Americans, she was probably the hardest worker there. And I was so proud of her. She amazed me on that trip. Her bravery, how she dealt with people. One day, I had no interpreter. And so I had nobody to help me with Bible studies. And I thought, well, this is going to be a wasted day. And then there's Betty over there. And I was like, she was doing something else. So I said, "Can I borrow you for a while?" And Betty was my interpreter with a lady. We went back in the back part there, and we had this Bible study with this lady, and here it was just me and Betty and this other lady, and she was a great interpreter. I would say my thing, and then she would say it in the Spanish language, and it was just a beautiful experience having her help me on that, and I was so proud of her for doing that. Let me give you a little background on the people in Honduras. This place is not the Bible Belt. This is not Oklahoma we went to. This is not Texas. Mostly Catholic people there, some denominational people, and then there's some in the church there. I saw no bigger church buildings there, even Catholic church buildings. I saw no bigger church building. Everything was just small, and there wasn't very many church buildings around, and so it doesn't seem like a lot of people are interested maybe or attend worship on Sundays. The town that we met in had around 15 members in their congregation. I spoke to another younger minister that I became friends with, and he said he was in a big city, and he said he had 50 to 60 in his congregation in that bigger city. Ministers only make $200 to $500 a month. The only ministers who own a house in Honduras are those who have, that house has been given to them, or they've inherited that house. And I saw some of the houses, I saw one of the houses that one of them, or two of the houses that some of the ministers lived in, and they are far from our houses. But they preached the word proudly. They spread the gospel in Honduras. Most of their houses have no doors, no windows. They have a sheet over the front, and they just kind of move it back, and so the breeze can run through the house. No electricity in many of the houses. Most we saw, no electricity. They had outhouses, steel outhouses, and they would have these concrete things that would catch the water, and that's where they would bathe in, and that's where they would wash their dishes in. And clean things in. And so the people, they don't have all the luxuries that we have. Another sad thing about Honduras is most of the people there do not get married. I heard that the government makes it hard for them to get married, and so most couples just live together in Honduras. Most of the houses that we went to, nobody was married. They just had their live-in boyfriend or girlfriend there at the house. And so this is a place that needs the gospel. I was so excited. This Sunday we were setting up for the clinic. There was a lady that wanted a Bible study, and I was like, hey, I want to do the first Bible study. And so I grabbed Hector. He was a teenager from Tegucigalpa, and he came just to be an interpreter. And so it was me and Hector, and we had the first Bible study there for the campaign, and I was so excited. And this lady said she wanted to repent and be baptized, and I was so excited about that. And I thought, man, this week I'm going to be baptizing people right and left. That did not happen. But after this study, she said she wanted to do that, and I saw the preacher from San Diego, and I told him about it. And so he said, let me go talk to her. So he went and talked to her, and then she wasn't baptized, and I was so disappointed. I mean, I was gloomed for about 30 minutes there. But I thought, I was so excited about this Bible study. But come to find out, she told me she wanted to repent, but she did not want to separate from her live-in boyfriend. And so she just left that day. I listened to some of the other ministers, and a lot of their studies, some of the ministers from Honduras, that was the first phrase they used with people in their Bible study. Are you living in fornication? That was the first phrase. And I thought, wow, that's pretty bold. I would do different. I would do a little different than that, but that's the way they did things. Most of them, that's the first, are you living? And so that would kind of start their study, and they would go from there in their study. Most of the Honduran people, they love Americans. I went out one day with a couple of guys from Honduras, and it was me and my brother-in-law, and we were going out, going to have all these Bible studies, and the first door we knocked on, we had a Bible study with them, and the second one we knocked on, I said, hey, I want to do this Bible study. They were like, all right, great, and so I sat down, I'm getting ready, I got my Bible out, and I'm getting ready to start the study, and I was like, which one of y'all going to interpret? And they was like, we can't interpret, and I was like, what? And so me and Logan thought we had interpreters that day, and we had no interpreters. And so we're out there, and we felt so useful. And during like the third study, I told Logan, I was like, let's just hand out tracts on how to be saved the rest of the day. Well, we left, these two Honduran preachers, and we went on our way handing out tracts everywhere. And that evening we get back, and one of them seemed kind of aggravated at me, one of the Honduran ministers. And I was like, hey, and he goes, you're like John Mark, or I can't remember what he said, something like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, y'all just left us. And I was like, we did not feel useful out there. And he said, you are very useful. He said, we can't get Bible studies without you. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, they'll study with you guys there, but they won't study with us Hondurans. I was like, really? He said, yes, y'all are so valuable to us. So even just sitting in on these studies, you could go to any door just about and knock on it, and they would allow you to have a Bible study if you had an American with you. That's how much they love Americans. And so I felt like maybe we were a little useful that day. There was one day that they dropped us off way back in the boonies. We're at the edge of the mountains, way back in the boonies, and they just drop us off, and we got our Bibles. We got a couple of waters on us. I tell you, when I got out of that van way back in the boonies, I thought to myself, there was this overwhelming feeling of, wow, you're doing something for the Lord out here. And I just felt so courageous that the Lord would let me have His Bible, share it with these people. And that day we went door to door, and we would we would just say, "Hola, ¿qué pasa?" or something, and they would say, and then they would start in their language, and we would go sit down, and we would just start these Bible studies with them. And I thought, wow, this is so amazing, but just really made you feel courageous out there, like a Paul and Silas or a Timothy. or a Peter just out sharing the gospel. And it was a wonderful experience. I want to show you some pictures right now. These are some of the things, these are some of the houses that people live in, things like this. The one on the left where the lady is, I don't think that is anyway, where the lady is, I think that's where you cook. A place like, I wanted to show y'all the electricity up there. I kind of widened that too much, but you can see their electric and all their telephone stuff, and that's in a big city there. This is Tegucigalpa. Here, this is the city that you land in, and there are just houses as far as you can see like that everywhere you go. They don't have sanitation departments like us, and so a lot of times you'll just see trash on the street, and they're just burning trash everywhere to get rid of the trash. This is the campaign site. You can see Miss Betty right there with the blue shirt on, and she helped with that, and she was wonderful with that. She spoke to the people, kept them from just entering when they weren't supposed to entering without their number and what have you. So this is a campaign site, and they were lined up way out there waiting to get into the campaign. Every evening we had this is the hotel, and they had a little a place for us to meet, kind of a conference place, and that's the mayor of Don Lee, which has about 200,000 people. He was the mayor, and he came and he just thanked us for sharing the word there in his city and in another city. There's Betty on the airplane. I thought, look at that smile right there. That's a smile. That's a good smile. This is our van that we went out in each day, the ministers, and this is a van meant for probably 8 people, and we would put 15 to 20 in it. And there's guys, we're going down the highway, and they're just hanging on for dear life, because it's so stuffed. There's us out on, there's us about to go door to door. We're waiting to go door to door and knock on doors around that place. And these two on the right were young guys from Tegucigalpa, and they're interpreters, and they helped with the youth during the week. But they also, the second one from the left there, he was the one that helped me with the first Bible study. The first Bible study there. Wonderful kids doing the Lord's work. Another day of the campaign site, people would bring their foods and set up outside of this and just sell their foods. They found it as an opportunity to make some money on the side. Each evening, this is the first evening we had no electricity at the school where we were having this gospel meeting, and that's the preacher on the left, and he got his phone out, and he's looking at his notes there, and that's the interpreter. His son was the interpreter each night, and so each night of the gospel meeting, here's us way back in the boonies here, and we've been having Bible studies all morning, and we just kind of met back in a place there just to talk for a while. This is one of the ministers in Honduras. He's the one I said has probably 50 to 60 in his congregation. Another minister, this is a couple we got to have a Bible study with here at their home. This lady we got to have a Bible study while she's making tortillas outside on her stove there. She's stoking up the fire, and she's slapping that corn all around, and she's making her tortillas for her family. This lady right here was baptized, and the next day, me and Robert went over for a follow-up Bible study. And her son heard us. He was inside, and he found it. We gave her that Bible somebody gave her that Bible, but her son found that old Bible in their house, and he came out. And boy, I just almost teared up watching this kid. He wanted to hear the whole Bible study. He wanted us to help him turn the pages. And so here's this woman. She becomes a Christian, and she can share this with her son. There's one of their ovens that they cook with. Those would land on you. Or we were having devotionals, and they would just fall out of the tree and hit people. And I saw one dent a pickup. One of those dented a pickup that was parked under it. Here's an evening time where we're having our men's devotional time. Here's a couple that was baptized. Right when they had the Bible study, they said they're going to go get married now, and they had this guy had a Bible study with them. He had a Bible study one day with them, And he got to tearing up telling me about this. He said it was down in a little bitty community nearby where me and my daughter went and some others. And he had kind of a bad experience. We had a little bad experience there that day. But he said, I'm never going back to Dinky. And I thought to myself, yeah, I don't really want to go back there either. But he said, I told this couple that I would come back and have a follow-up Bible study with them. And he said, I went the next day, and there's those couple right there. And he said, I was so blessed that I was courageous enough to go back and study the Bible, and they came and they were baptized. Another lady baptized her son as they were watching. That's the main leader of the campaign, John Farber, and a wonderful man of God, does a lot of good in missions. There he is baptizing another lady. There's my wonderful, sweet daughter. She fell in love with this kid. He came around every day. She dealt with homeless people, homeless kids, and I asked her, what was your favorite part of the trip? And she said, dealing with the kids. She loved those kids. She fell in love with all those kids. Here's our gospel meeting. And here, I wanted to end with this right here. I want to end with wore out Betty. That's how hard she worked each day. She was wore out at the end of the day because she worked so hard, and I'm so proud of that lady. And I wish y'all could have seen her work. She did a wonderful work. Preacher 15 minutes.
Preacher 15 minutes.
Preacher.
Okay. Yeah, Eric told me he was going to talk for 15 minutes. So, no, it's good. Now, man, I tell you what, I could stand up here and talk for a couple hours. You guys got a couple hours? Because I got some things to say. I want to echo a few things that Eric said, because this was a tremendous campaign. And there were a lot of fabulous things that happened this year. But he kind of gave you a good overview of the kind of things that we did. But what I want to do is I want to focus on some things that were different. Because I went last year, and this campaign was very different. I went into this thinking I was a veteran, and I had it all figured out. And so I thought I had all the answers. But I found out real quick that every site and every year is that there's a new challenge. There's something new that happens. And this year was definitely an exercise in flexibility. I think that defined the whole week. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that made this trip different and what made it unique and special. And then I'll also have a couple stories that I want to share with you. So San Diego. So the initial plan for our campaign, our clinic, was to be in this school right here. This is a primary school, and the plan was that the director was going to cancel classes for the week, and so we were going to have all the classrooms to set up the clinic, and it would be a nice confined space for us to be able to have this clinic and campaign. And John Farber got a text the night before we were going to get there, and the director said, "You can still use the school, but I'm not going to cancel classes." And so Plan A was already out the window. So before we ever landed our plane, we were on to Plan B. Okay, so Plan B, we all came in on Saturday. And we were going to try to set up here in the school. And so on Sunday, we have the first day of the campaign. We set up the clinic, and we invite the members of the congregation, the local congregation, to bring them and their families through the clinic so we can kind of give it a test run and see how it works. And so we set up tents. We borrowed these tents from the military, actually. And these ones were okay, but we also had a lot of pop-up tents. And the pharmacy here, it was set up in this snack shack, which is not very secure for a pharmacy. But so we had this site here, a little pop-up tent there you see on the corner. So this is what we tried to do on Sunday. Last year, when our campaign site was in they call it a university, but it was essentially a high school that was more technically oriented, and it had a lot of technical schools within it, and you saw kids with different patches representing the different schools that are represented. And so this site was very secure. It had really high concrete walls all the way around, big heavy doors that locked. There were armed guards at every entrance, and it was a very secure site. This school had really high concrete walls on two sides. The other two sides had barbed wire fence. And so you can see how from the very beginning, it became different very quickly. The biggest difference was the fact that we could not properly secure the site, and so there were kids from the surrounding area that were coming in. So on Sunday, we didn't know who was supposed to be there, who was not supposed to be there. There were members of the congregation, but we were just overran with kids. There were kids all over the place, and so the members of the teen evangelism crew, we had to play with them just to keep them occupied so that they could operate the clinic. And so we found out real quick that this wasn't going to work because this was Sunday, remember, there's no school in session. So we're overran, and tomorrow we're going to get about 300 kids going to school who are also going to be sharing the space with us. So we found out real quick that plan B was not going to work. And so we moved on to plan C. So on Monday morning, I got up really early. I grabbed a quick bite of breakfast. We loaded about 12, 15 guys in that van that Eric was telling you about, and we went over to the site early, and we started taking down all these tents. We started carrying them across the street. And so this is I put a picture of the church here. This is he said he didn't see a lot of churches. This was the Church of Christ there in San Diego. And so those are the guys who were coming, the members of that congregation were coming through the site. So that wasn't supposed to be a whole lot of people, but it ended up being, we were there all day looking at people. So people got in somehow. So anyway, this is what we came, this isn't the exact picture, but this gives you an idea of what we came to Monday morning, the number of people who were waiting to come into the clinic. So we carried those tents, let me see if this will work. I'm not getting this to work right. Okay, so anyway, the gate to the school is right there. You see that? You see the little blue umbrella up top. So that's the gate into the school, and then this little barbed wire fence right here is a courtyard to about 7 or 8 houses, little huts that we ended up setting our clinic in. Now we had to keep our registration in the school because that's how the government, that's how we were registered with the government as being a campaign. And it was at the school. So we had registration across the street, and then they would walk back across to the clinic. And so we had to carry those tents through the crowds over to and set the tents up across the street. There's another view of that. Where this lady is standing right here, that's the opening. That's the gate. And when I talk about Betty later, I'm going to show you that's her gate right there. Okay. So anyway, so keep that in mind. So here's Betty. Oh, I guess I'm going to talk about her right now. So here's Betty. So I talk about flexibility, okay? This lady here, she's standing at her gate. This is the last day. But she wasn't supposed to do this job. This is not what she was sent over there to do, okay? She was going to be a part of registration, so she was going to be part of the intake. So she was going to use her knowledge of her knowledge of English and of Spanish to be able to communicate with the people. They were going to tell her information about themselves, and she was going to pass it on to us. And so that was her job, to be able to be the first contact and be able to talk to these people and relate to them. Okay, well, what she ended up doing is with her unique skills gave her the ability to be a very good guard. And so she stood at this gate. I don't think I hardly ever saw her leave. Whenever we were all there at lunch, we'd all kind of have to rotate in shifts to eat some lunch. And I never saw her eat. I'm sure she did at some point, but she had a quick lunch and went right back to her gate. And when I was talking to Betty about the trip, one of the things that she expressed was that how this was difficult for her. It was difficult because she doesn't like being the mean person, okay? So let me tell you how mean she had to be, okay? You saw this line of people, right? And so how we would control how many people came in is that when we got there in the morning, there were numbers that were handed out to the people in line, okay? So that number allowed those people to go in and get registered to go through the clinic, okay? Well, the person who got a number, somehow by the time they got to the beginning and got registered, they then had 8 people that were going to be going through the clinic with them. Okay, and so that's how our numbers kept growing. The first day, it really threw us for a loop because we handed out a number to every person in line, and we ended up having that clinic open till about 6:30 that first night. That's why we were preaching in the dark, and we didn't eat dinner till about 9:30 or 10 that night because we couldn't get everybody through the clinic. And so what we had to do is we learned that we had to limit the number of numbers we handed out. Okay, so every morning I think we gave out 200 tickets. No, it wasn't that many. I don't remember. Anyway, they figured they knew how to handle it. Larry took care of that. He handed out a certain number of numbers. And then if there was still time after those numbers had gone through, after lunch, they would give more people numbers, okay? So we handed out a certain number of numbers, and there were still more people in line. So we had to tell those people that were still in line, you can stand in line if you want, but you may not be seen today. And Betty had to be the person that kept everybody out, okay? So people were sick and walking for hours to get to the clinic, and they needed to see a doctor, and Betty had to be the one to tell them, our numbers are given out today. I don't know that we'll be able to see you today. Come back tomorrow. Come earlier. These people were standing in line starting at 5 o'clock in the morning to be able to get in. And so that was hard for Betty, and I can understand that. That would be really, really difficult. It was something that she didn't cherish doing. But she did it well, and she did a great job doing it. And we're so proud of her because she told me a story. So this day, she's standing here at the gate. This is the last day, okay? So this day, that morning, an old lady came, and she said that she walked up to her, and she had walked, I don't remember how long you said, an hour or two to get to the clinic. And all the numbers had been given out. And Betty had to tell her, I don't know if we're going to be able to see you today. And she's like, I need to see a doctor. But the lady, Betty said that she was impressed of the lady's attitude because the lady told her, well, I guess it's in God's hands. And so she sat and she waited. And then Betty told me how excited she was when she found out that the lady was going to be able to come in and go through the clinic. That was a highlight of her week, to be able to allow that lady to come through that gate to be able to see the doctors. And so that's the heart that she has, and so I really appreciate what you did for us that week. And she was always there to help us through an interpretation, or she was kind of a go-to lady. So we really thank you. So anyway, I'm back. I allowed myself to go on that little tangent because I love Betty. All right, so we carried these tents like this across the street and set them up in this little courtyard across the street. So this is the area here. You see this house to your left. That is, I believe that's the minister's house, right? That's the minister's house. And so we set up the pharmacy in his house. And I don't know if he didn't have anything or if he moved everything out of the house, but I don't think he had much. And we had plenty of room to be able to set up a clinic in his house, because he just didn't have possessions. And so anyway, what you're seeing here, there's that tent right there became a Bible study tent, and this is kind of in the beginning stages of setup here. So this is the pharmacy. This is inside that house, and this was by far one of the nicer houses in this area. And what Eric is describing is everywhere else around this area. This was really super nice. And it had a door that shut. We were able to lock up the pharmacy, so it was a great place to be able to be. We were blessed to have it. This right here is a house across the courtyard where where the doctors set up. These are the two doctors doing consultations here, and the physical therapist was on down the breezeway just a little bit. Everybody else was in tents. We set up underneath tents, and this is the big tent where people waited to see the doctor. And then they moved them up here in this little tent up front. So they came from the big tent to the little tent to the doctors. And so that was kind of, I guess progressing up. I got to move closer to the doctor. So, and then these tents here were where we held Bible studies. And so this is our campaign site. We had another little area for glasses. I didn't get a picture of that up there. But this is where we operated, and it worked much nicer. This Plan C worked out beautifully. Everything was more localized, and we were able to control entry for the most part, but we still were only surrounded by barbed wire fences. So there were still kids all over the place all the time. And that's going to come, I'm telling you about that, but I'm going to finish telling you about that a little bit later. Just remember there's kids everywhere, and we're playing with them all the time. And that's what really made this campaign a lot different than the last year, because we never had that in Gracias. And so here again is the line. These are the nurses, so they would do the intake and the triage here, and set up the plan of where everybody was going to go that day. Eric had told me that I was going to give you these numbers, so he already gave them to you, but they're on my screen here. So registered patients, 969, doctor's patients, 960, pharmacy patients, 1,014, prescriptions filled, 4,725. Well, you see it. A lot of people came through that clinic here, but this is the big one, 348 Bible studies with 507 different students. And that's why we were there that week, and we were so proud to be able to do that. And we had 8 baptisms, and what Eric didn't tell you about was the restorations. This is another big thing that Logan, Angie's brother, Logan and Southern were two of the ones who kind of took this little project on. At some point during the week, I don't know how much they did it, but I know they did this. They got a list from the local church of members who were not faithful. And so they went to those addresses and they had Bible studies with those who were not faithful. And so there were 2 restorations because of those efforts, those guys, getting those guys back in. And so those are also blessings. So here's all the numbers for the camp or the gospel meeting. And the 25, the new converts class, that's a really cool thing. It was a class for those who had been baptized or interested in being baptized, and they were all part of that new converts class that Logan led. But what I got to do was teen evangelism. So that's the clinic, okay? And Mackenzie joined us on Monday, Tuesday, huh? I don't know. She reached your dad on Monday, right? And then you joined us on Tuesday. Okay. So these are, and that becomes important in this story I'm going to tell you here in a little bit. But what we did for most of our time is that we put together skits, and we went into the school. This is, again, that same school, that primary school, and we put on skits. Now, last year in Gracias, that's a large town, a really large town, and we spent our whole week going from school to school to school, and we did the same skit every single day because that's how many schools there were. So we just, and they had some of them set up ahead of time, some of them we just knocked on the door and they let us come in and give our little skit and our little Bible presentation. This year we were in a really small village. What did you say, 1,300 people in this little bitty town. And so I was told there's only one school and this was it. And so but the director gave us permission to come into the classroom every morning. He said, I'd like you to come after 10:30 because they've already had their recess, and so you can kind of come in after they've had the recess and you can go till the end of the day. And then they got out at like noon, so we didn't have a whole lot of time. No, we ate at noon. They got out at 1. So we didn't have a whole lot of time with them. So we went as far as we could, and but we got into every classroom at least twice. Some of them we got to three times. So we went into school every morning, and the kids loved hearing our Bible stories. And so we just kept making up new ones and going in and having a good time with those kids. So this here is Jonathan, and he's Hector's brother. That's right, Hector's brother. He's Hector's brother, and he was fantastic interpreter. He spoke great English, understood things well, but he did more than just translate what we said. He kept going, and I could tell that as I was given the lesson that he would add on to it, and the kids just responded to him so much that I got to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to tell the story, but then you do the application, because they're really responding to you when you speak. And so he did a really fantastic job. And so this is one of the classrooms that we were in, and that's I wanted to show you Jonathan there. But we had a good time. This was some of the team. I put that in there for a reason, but I'm not sure why now. Oh, there it is. Okay, so, I know why I put that there. Okay, so these 4 girls here, this is something else we did. So these 4 girls here, the 2 on the left are cousins, and then the other 2 are just friends from the same congregation. But all 4 of them had the idea of weaving little bracelets. And so they individually, now these 2 friends work together, and then those friends, the cousins, they live a few states away from each other, so they did it like over the phone with each other. They hang out all the time together. But anyway, they before the campaign started, they spent weeks and weeks weaving a giant, a giant mass of these woven bracelets. And so these bracelets became very popular. Kids would come and ask for them. They found out we were giving out bracelets, and they had Ziploc gallon bag size full of these bracelets they were weaving. So I've got a couple here. So anyway, we ran out really quick, and so we started a little deal since we had. So here's Cassie putting on one of her bracelets there. So we started weaving bracelets before we were able to go into the schools at 10:30. And we figured out we weren't able to do a whole lot to keep up with the demand, but we were able to make a few to give out, right? So that was really good. And that's the one I made. I made one. That was it. You like it? Is it pretty? Oh. Anyway, okay. But most of the time we were out in the city. Okay, we were in San Diego. We were walking around, passing out flyers, trying to get people to aware of the clinic that was going on. And so this is part of the city that we walked around. And this is by far, this is the downtown. It was maybe about 2 blocks, and there were all these little bitty rundown shops. But everything else were those huts that you saw in Eric's presentation. That's what the city was, and so that's what we spend most of our time doing. So I told you Mackenzie joined us on Tuesday. And she plays a little part in the story I'm getting ready to tell. So I want to pause here and talk about Mackenzie for a little bit, because she did a fantastic job also. Eric told you how uneasy she was when she first got there, but after she got in there and kind of got acclimated to things, got over a little bit of that culture shock. Man, that girl was going to town. And I chose this picture because this floored me. I've never seen this before. This was the last day, right? This is our Thursday. This is our Thursday. And so we go to the school early. We're not. The director told us not to come till 10:30 after recess. And we said, hey, it's the last day. What's he going to do, kick us out? So we go early, and we join recess with these kids. And we have a ball just playing games with them, playing soccer. A soccer game broke out on that concrete pad you see behind you there. And so we're over there playing with these kids, and these 2 little girls walk up to Mackenzie, and these 2 little schoolgirls give Mackenzie a present. Never seen it. They cared so much about her that they gave her a present. They don't have anything. but they found something to give her, and they found this little box to be able to give it to her in. So they gave her that gold necklace that's around her neck there, and I thought that showed the impact that Mackenzie had on the kids at this place. And so she did a fantastic job, and I'm really glad that Mackenzie came along with us. Also, I want to introduce you to one other person. The guy in the red Falcon shirt, it's right underneath his name, is Fernando. Fernando, on Monday, he was baptized Monday, is that right? Yeah, so he was baptized on Monday, and on Tuesday, he joined our teen evangelism. He wanted to go with us and go out and talk to people and help evangelize the city that he's from. And so I thought that was fantastic. And he was so much fun. He spoke no English at all, but we still had a lot of fun with him, and I'm glad he joined the team. Now he's important in the story because I couldn't understand if he went to the high school or at one point or was currently going to it, was not going to classes because of the campaign. I don't know, but. Remember earlier I told you that we were told there was only one school, and I said there's got to be more than just a primary school in this. And so on Monday, we went out walking around, and I found the school. And me and Jonathan, we went up to the gate of the high school, and there were guards at the gate, and we flagged them down, and we said, "Can we talk to the director?" And they let us all come in. We had 12, 14 kids. And they let us all come in and talk to the director. School was already out. And we asked him if we could present a Bible lesson at the high school. And he said, sure, come back tomorrow. He told us to come back after, I think it was noon or 1 o'clock, whatever, after lunch. And so on Tuesday, Mackenzie's first day with us, we get done with lunch and we head over to the high school. Fernando knows a shortcut, a way I didn't go. And so we are walking down this little path, and you can see the walls of the high school there behind us. We're getting ready to cross a soccer field and getting ready to go to the high school. As we approached the high school, we had hundreds of kids that were crowding the fence line, and they were yelling at us. They were insulting us. And they were being really mean and hateful, and they were being ugly high school kids, and it was very overwhelming to have so many people who were being so ugly. But we got in the school. This is the school here, and as we walked these sidewalks, they were lining the sidewalks and yelling at us and laughing at us. And they take us to this pavilion there. You see there's a bunch of desks. I'm guessing there was probably a big test that people had just taken because there was a few stragglers that were still taking a test, and then they had all those chairs cleared out for us. And we had to wait. We sat there and waited under that pavilion. And by then the kids had kind of dispersed, but they were just kind of, all the eyes were on us, just watching us walk around. And then eventually the kids started. They were going to gather them under that pavilion, and eventually they did. They gathered in there. There's probably about 250 kids, and so they gathered around, and we were. They were just standing in this semicircle around us, and it was so weird. And we were standing there in the middle. There were no teachers around. There were teachers present, but they were just kind of peeking their heads out of the doors. And the kids were still kind of, you still heard things coming out of the crowd, and the girls especially were really nervous, which is understandable. There was cat calls and there was all kinds of things going on, and so it was a very uneasy situation. And Jonathan there, we had worked out that we were going to that he was going to kind of introduce us a little bit. And then I would give a lesson. We were going to talk about Paul and how he turned his life around, but he was standing there and he was like, I'm really nervous. He goes, okay, I can do this. We never got introduced. A teacher never came over and told who we were, never told us to get started. So we just said, let's go. We did it. We just started. He started talking to these kids, and when he first started, there was quite a bit of laughing, but he started talking to these kids, and he went on forever. I don't know what he talked about, but he was talking to these kids for a long time, and the whole time you could hear whistles coming from behind and that kind of thing, but he started getting their attention. They started responding to him, and so he started introducing us. So he was going down the line, telling them our names and what state we were from. And then he gets to Fernando. He says, "You guys probably know Fernando. He goes to school here with you guys." And the kids just started laughing at him and yelling at him. And Jonathan goes, "Hey, what are you laughing at? At least he has the courage to be able to make a decision and make a commitment in his life." He goes, "What are you doing?" He told me what he was telling them later. He says, what are you doing with your life? And then we started talking about Paul and how he made a decision and chose to do something worthwhile with his life and to follow Christ when he faced Christ on that road, and he stood up for Fernando, and that meant a lot to that kid. He's got to go back to that school and face those kids, and he faced them in a very public way, and he bravely faced them and was not afraid to stand there with us. But after the kids left, or after he was done talking, the teens had a bunch of literature, because we weren't going to be able to pass out a bunch of stuff. But we took some of those pamphlets and we passed them all out. I didn't pass out pamphlets. I stood back and I watched all the girls. I wanted to make sure that there was no one going to be doing anything dumb, right? I mean, we're in a school. I never felt threatened, like my life was in danger, but it was a very, very difficult situation. But after all the kids left, we stood underneath this pavilion, and I talked to the teens a little bit, because I was super proud of them that day, because they faced something that they don't normally have to deal with. They faced a difficult situation that they don't normally see here in the States. Okay, they may be looked down upon, but they're never openly mocked for what they believe. And so we talked about that, and we talked about how there were some teenage boys in there who were being stupid, is what you had in that crowd. But that's not all that was in that crowd. There were people who were listening. There were people who were responding to what Jonathan was saying. And there were people in that crowd who are going to be changed by what they heard that day. And that's why we're there, and that's what's important, and that's why we go on these campaigns. And so I tell you that story not to scare anybody, but I tell you that because there are people out there who are fighting to take the message under any circumstance, and just because you don't see the anger every day in your life, it still exists out there. And our teens got to face that and got to see just a little taste of that. And luckily, it was in a very secure location to do that. But I was really, really proud of those guys that day. But most of the time, we had a lot of fun. We played with the kids. I'm going to go back to the kids, because the kids are what made this different. There were a lot of relationships built with these kids. We couldn't speak their language, didn't know who they were. Most of them didn't know their names. Well, we may know their names because we could ask them their names, but we didn't know anything about them. But those teens bonded with the kids who were coming every day. Those kids in that community may not know a lot about God, and they may not know who God is from anyone else. But they knew that there was something special going on, and they came every day, and they wanted to play, and they wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and they wanted to hang around our kids. And so there was oh yeah, this is the other thing that Betty loved. Betty loved being able to hold the little baby. So that's not Betty though. That's Mary Caroline. Okay, but they built relationships, and these are just some of the kids in the that came around, and it was really special because they got to where it was overwhelming at times because they were just all over the place. And we constantly had to be playing with them, be doing things with them. But it also paid big dividends too. So here's some more of that. But here's our big crew. So that was after walking streets one day. But sometimes they looked like this, but most times they looked like this. That's how they were a lot of time. And then stuff like that. And then we have Eric. Eric was there too. Eric, this guy, well here, let me get beyond this. This is a funny pic, but that Bible study Eric told you about, I got a picture of it. It's right there. So that's the first Bible study. It's Eric studying with this lady. That's Hector McKenzie. And I put this picture up here not knowing what Eric was going to talk about. But I put it up there because I'm also really proud of Eric, because I've always known that Eric has a true heart for spreading the word of God. But man, it was on full display that week. It was, he was just, he struggled with some heat exhaustion, some sickness, right? A couple days were difficult for him, but he still got out there. And every chance he had, he was talking to somebody. He just loved being able to share that with people, and he has such a heart. The Hondurans are very blunt. They're very direct in their approach. So I imagine that seeing Eric and how he talked to them was a breath of fresh air, because Eric has a heart and a demeanor that just shows love, and I think that's what a true preacher of God should be. And so I really appreciate that, Eric. And you did some great things that week. We didn't have many baptisms. We only had 8 baptisms, but we planted a ton of seeds. And we get to go back there next year, and I'll bet you some of those seeds are going to be growing. Those seeds are going to be they're planted and they're watering, and that minister is there. He has a list of everybody we talked to, and he's going to be talking to them throughout this year, and then we get to go back and see him again next year. And that's when magic starts to happen. And so that's the beauty of this campaign. And so I really appreciate what you guys allowed us to do by letting us go there, because good things did happen there. And I was very proud of all of what happened that week, because we shared the gospel. You know, we did that in Honduras, and I know I'm going late, guys. I'm almost done, so please bear with me. We had a lot of opportunity to talk to people that week, but that's not the only mission field that we have, right? We have another place to work, and God put us all here, and God gave every single one of us the ability to do what we did that week. And it may not be as easy. People may not be as responsive, but that doesn't make it any less critical that we continue to do what it is that God put us here to do. And so this evening, I want to first of all encourage you to continue to be the missionary in your city and in your work that God needs you to be. But I also want to offer you an invitation. I always want to be able to give you an opportunity where if you've been thinking about giving your life to Christ, where if you've had a seed planted in you and it just hasn't come full bloom yet, but you think it's about time that it does, then the best way to take care of that is now. The best time to take care of that is now. We learned that this morning, right? Eric told us how the best time, that God only knows now, and now's the time. And so if there is anybody who needs the prayers of this congregation, or if there's anyone who wants to give their life to Christ and be buried with him in baptism, then please come forward as we stand and sing.
If you were not able to partake of the Lord's Supper this morning and would like to do so, you can exit out these doors and go into the library, and there will be some men there to help you. Closing song tonight would be number 722. After this, Noah Henson will lead us in a closing prayer. After number 722, first verse only. Let the beauty of Jesus be
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for everything you've done for us in our lives, and thank you for the wonderful mission trip that went so well, and thank you for letting them plant seeds and helping them with that. And we love you so much, Heavenly Father, and thank you for this wonderful day, and please help us to have a wonderful week. We love you so much. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.